so. And with that, I'd like to thank you everyone for coming out to this meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, who happens to be sitting right in the same room with me. And that would be myself. I'll be talking about introduction to the Fediverse. We'll have a discussion as well about this. So it's not going to be just me about the Fediverse, because that can be boring. And who wants to be bored and such? So let me update my stuff. This is a presentation that was supposed to happen last month. Unfortunately, situations dictated that it was just not going to happen. So hopefully situations will be a little more kind this time around. So there we go. Introduction to the Fediverse. Don't mind the date. That was last month's date. My name is Craig Maloney, and I have been on the Fediverse since about 2008, possibly even earlier. I was on Identica. Folks remember that. I was also responsible for some of the deployments of Laconica for SourceForge hosted applications. I've been a huge fan of social networks and federated social networks for the longest time. But enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the Fediverse. So back in June 15th in 2018, I did a presentation about Mastodon. And you can go and find all sorts of information about Mastodon. My talk shows up along with a few other folks that have discovered Mastodon along the way. I won't talk too much about Mastodon itself. There is a fabulous book called Mastodon for Dummies. I haven't made my way all the way through it, but it is it's actually much better than you would imagine. A For Dummies book being, it actually goes into some depth. They talk about how to install your own server and all that other wonderful stuff. So I would highly recommend at least checking this book out. I'm going to read it myself and give a review of it, but definitely give this a peek. It's not expensive. It's I think it was $15 on Amazon. So there you go. So I'm not going to talk too much about Mastodon itself, but again, I gave that talk and nothing really happened. All the people that I know were like, here's this Mastodon thing, it's kind of cool, whatever. And you just kind of, I just sat and waited very patiently for everyone to come over to Mastodon. Nobody really came over to this wonderful Mastodon Fediverse thing that I was talking about. And then all of a sudden, apparently it was Bring Your Bathroom Fixtures Day to work over at Twitter. And suddenly everyone got very interested in what was happening over on the Fediverse. And it's like, oh, hey, now all you want to figure out what the heck's going on. Yeah, you burned the old place, and now you want to know what's going on. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm a very forgiving person. But unfortunately, the Fediverse is kind of a weird, strange, wonderful, woolly place that has a lot of moving parts to it. So I will hopefully be your guide to all the wonderful stuff of the Fediverse and that. So there's this real life, and basically it talks a little bit about the Fediverse in the first panel. I'm not going to read the whole thing through, but it's May, and I don't remember the other character's name. I think it's Dave, offhand, talking about what the Fediverse is and what Mastodon is. And so Dave, of course, be the open source wonderful guru that he is, starts talking about all the wonderful things that you can do with it. It's an open source, decentralized social network, so there's no advertising, no worries about algorithms. And he says, but then, it's actually not one network so much as a series of federated series, blah, blah, blah. And now some servers are invite only, so you have to, and then May's like, that's why I haven't signed up for this Mastodon thing quite yet. It can get a little complicated, and the Fediverse in general. And for a lot of folks, it's kind of like the parable, the fable of the fox and the grapes, where people are like, oh, it's so complicated, I'm not going to worry about it. It's not as complicated as folks imagine. It just takes a little bit of understanding how the whole thing works together. So it is complicated, but it's really not that complicated. I mean, I can explain to you what it is very simply. And so I'll go ahead and do that. It does take a little effort, though. So I'm not going to say that it's no effort, that you're going to be able to sign up to a server and not have to worry about things. It takes a little bit of effort to understand how it all works, but we'll go through that and we'll get you all squared away on that. So what we will cover is what the Fediverse is and isn't. We'll give you a brief overview of the ActivityPub protocol. That is the glue that combines all of the Fediverse pieces, and we'll talk a bit about that. I'll give you a brief overview of some of the applications and services out there, the obligatory so what, what are you supposed to do with all this stuff? And then we'll do a discussion, question and answer piece. So what we will conveniently ignore, like I mentioned, is a deep dive into Mastodon, although we'll cover it in some detail. So if you're looking for an introduction to Mastodon, I gave a talk about that back in 2018. There are other folks that can give you that talk. This is not going to be that talk. We won't also do a deep dive into other projects, though we'll cover some of them in detail. And we won't talk about other decentralization efforts, specifically ones that aren't necessarily ActivityPub related. There's plenty of decentralization efforts out there, like Secure Scuttlebutt, a whole bunch of others that have sprung up along the way, because everyone seems to think that the main problem is throwing technology at this. It's not. But we'll focus primarily on ActivityPub for the purposes of this discussion. So a common metaphor for the Fediverse is email, and it's a useful metaphor. It's not necessarily the best metaphor for this, but it's useful because a lot of people understand how email works. Email uses a protocol. It's called SMTP, the Simple Mail Transport Protocol, which we'll probably be talking about in a couple months, but never mind, which is common amongst all the mail servers that are out there. It's an agreed upon standard for sending mail-like information between disparate servers. So every server that's out there agrees we're going to be using SMTP as our common ground for communicating with each other. My mail server can receive email from all the rest of the other mail servers that are out there, although I'm not necessarily obliged to receive that email. I use Zen Spamhaus for going through and saying, hey, these are people that I don't necessarily want to receive mail from because they're known spammers. So I'm not going to accept mail from them. There's a couple others that show up in my little mail filters, and I'm like, no, I'm not accepting mail from you. Go away. But I can also send mail to other folks, though they also are not obligated to receive my mail. Comcast, Yahoo, all the rest of them. Sometimes they get a little persnickety about all this stuff. Ameritech.net as well. Sorry, Aunt Sally. Where the metaphor kind of falls apart, though, is that SMTP is strictly used for email. There's no other purpose for it or no significant use for it. Yes, there's stuff where we'll use your email server as a chat protocol, but that's kind of an outlier. Not a whole lot of things really use SMTP type protocols for any other type of purpose other than sending emails back and forth. It also doesn't have any built-in mechanisms for authenticating a sender. There is a little bit of stuff. I mean, this sentence is doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's stuff like SPF, DMARC, DKIM, all that other kind of stuff. But generally speaking, there's no authentication of the particular sender that happens. It's not built in. It's all stuff that's baked in on top of it to try and make all of that work. And SMTP is only server to server. There's no client. I mean, I can't say I'm going to start up my little SMTP client and then send out stuff in most cases. I mean, again, like all metaphors, it's a little wibbly wobbly about the specifics. So what is this Fediverse that we're talking about? So set of applications and services that use the protocol. All right. So what is ActivityPub? So ActivityPub, according to our good friends over at Wikipedia, says ActivityPub is an open, decentralized social networking platform protocol based on Pump.io's ActivityPump protocol. It provides a client-server API for creating, updating, and deleting content, as well as a federated server-to-server API for delivering notifications and content. There we go. We're done. That's the ActivityPub. No, of course, I'm not going to let you sit there with that. No. So back in late 2000s, Evan Perdomo had the idea of a decentralized platform, a federated platform called Identica. It also had its open source component, which was called Status.net. Status.net is still out there. You may know it as GNU Social, but that was the original. They used a protocol called OStatus to send messages back and forth between other things. And it was used primarily as a Twitter-like social network. was very cool. A lot of journalists and folks managed to get themselves over onto Identica. It was a great party. And then they slowly migrated back over onto Twitter and other platforms. So, and then Pump.io came out. It was more of a Facebook-ish type thing, but it was also one of the first early versions of what later became ActivityPub. It was the idea of multiple servers being able to talk to each other. It wasn't really specific on the content that was sent back and forth. You could send over Facebook-like messages. You could send over Twitter-like messages. You could send over media content and all that other kind of stuff. It was a really good early attempt. It just didn't get a whole lot of legs at the time. And then it all got subsumed into the ActivityPub protocol. And this is where the Fediverse really shines, because it is a whole bunch of different things that can be sent across and doesn't necessarily make any assumptions about what it is. It's not like it's replicating a Twitter. It's not like it's replicating a Facebook. It's replicating a whole bunch of different things. And we'll get to that very shortly. So if you're interested in reading W3 specifications, as I'm sure you all are, you can head on over to the link www.w3.org/TR/ActivityPub. You can also head, it's a recommendation as of 2018, so pretty recent. The authors of the ActivityPub specification are Christine Lemmer-Weber, who we had in several months prior, Jessica Talon, Aaron Shepard, Amy Guy, and Evan Prodromou, name also very familiar. And examples about this. And the example that I'm going to use comes from the following link, which is at the w3.org/TR/ActivityPub. So let's talk a little bit about ActivityPub in general. So the fundamental concepts of it are that it provides two layers. It provides a server-to-server federation protocol, so decentralized websites can share information, and a client-to-server protocol, so that users, including I'm not seeing my little thing here. Real world users, bots, and other automated processes can communicate with ActivityPub using their accounts on servers from a phone or desktop or web application or whatever. So it's not necessarily just two servers, passing information back and forth. There are other things as well for allowing clients to talk directly to ActivityPub. It's not necessarily done in practice, though, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's see. There we go. So we have an actor. We have an actor that has an inbox and an outbox. So they have the ability to receive messages, and they have the ability to send messages. So this is a concept in ActivityPub. It's an actor, object, person, entity, whatever you want to call it. It's an actor in this particular protocol. So in the activity streams, ActivityPub parlance, this is a type person up here. You have the ID, so this is where they hang out. So in this case, it's social.example/Alyssa. You have a name. So in here, it's Alyssa P. Hacker. We have a preferred username, which is all lowercase Alyssa. Summary, she's a Lisp enthusiast hailing from MIT. Her inbox is at this particular link, which is social.example/Alyssa/inbox. Her outbox, the same /outbox. A list of her followers and who she's following, or at followers and following, respectively. And anything that she's particularly liked is at a liked box as well, or link. So what happens when you're sending messages and receiving messages? So Alyssa let's talk about posts. Let's say she wants to send a message to the outside world. She can post to her outbox. The rest of the world can then get from her outbox and then distribute it however it needs to. The rest of the world can also send information, so a post, into Alyssa's inbox, where then Alyssa can then get all that stuff. So the actor sends messages and posts content. The outside world can then read the messages from that actor. Making sense? All right. So let's say that Alyssa message to Ben. Ben is not at the same place. He's not at social.example. He's at chatty.example/Ben. And this has been attributed to social.example/Alyssa. Content is, say, did you finish reading that book that I lent you? Okay, so she's sending a message over to Ben. It is of type note. So that is in that particular parlance, it's a note. So it's a note type entity that is being sent across. I believe this is in JSON that's being sent across. So there we go. So Alyssa then posts that message into her outbox. What happens then? Since this is a non-activity object, the server recognizes this is an object being newly created and does the courtesy of wrapping it and in a create activity. So activities can be sent around the activity pub, generate the following pattern of some activity by some action being taken on the object. In this case, the activity is creation of an object posted by a person. So she sends that tiny little bit of JSON over there, and then the server does all the rest of the stuff. So the server then says, here's the context. It's an activity streams context. Here's the type create. Here's the ID of this, blah, 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 to chatty.example/Ben from the actor who's sending it, Alyssa. The object type is a type note. So it wraps all of that stuff in here, and it gives it an ID as well that wraps around that stuff. And I know this sounds incredibly complicated, but it's basically all the wrapper. It's like SMTP. You write in your message, you type in your, who is it to, subject matter, your note, and all that other kind of stuff. And then SMTP wraps it all together and all that wonderful, HTML nonsense and plain text nonsense, and then sends it across over to the other mail server and makes it all happy. It's the same idea. It's just wrapping all this stuff together and then sending it out. So then Alyssa's server sends a post request over to Ben's inbox, where Ben, being his green self, will then be able to receive it. So Alyssa's outbox sends a message over to Ben's inbox with that particular content. So there's a lot more of examples on that particular site. And I won't get into all of the examples because unfortunately it does get a little eyes back in your head of all the stuff that's happening, but you can follow that link for more examples, especially things like Ben's response, Alyssa liking the response, and the thrilling conclusion, which I will not spoil here, about what all happens. All right, so what? So we've been sending messages back and forth on the internet since time immemorial. I mean, we had the finger protocol, we had the talk protocol, we've had XMPP. I'm sorry, we still have XMPP out there. We have all of these things for sending messages back and forth. So what? Why do we need a new one? Well, ActivityPub is about connecting disparate systems in a meaningful way. What does that mean? That means that all of these systems can communicate with each other and can pick and choose what it is that they're doing. So in this case, let's say we have something like PeerTube over in this left-hand corner, bottom left-hand corner. Let's say that somebody posts a video onto their PeerTube instance. If I'm on Mastodon, Mastodon can do something useful with that. It can say, oh, my friend such and such posted a video and it goes to to their outbox, comes to my inbox. Mastodon can say, oh, here's a video that's on a PeerTube instance. You can view it. Okay. Or you can go to the link or whatever you want to do. So that it's not necessarily just, hey, I'm in a PeerTube instance and other PeerTube instances can read this particular thing. Now a Mastodon instance can read that. In this case here at the top right corner, we have Mobilizon. Mobilizon is an event management system. So if you are scheduling an event, let's say you're scheduling a meeting for a certain Michigan Unix users group, and you say, hey, we're having our meeting. It's at 6:30, second Tuesday of the month. We're going to be talking about the Fediverse. If you're following that on Mastodon, you will then see a thing that says, hey, we're meeting, all this other wonderful stuff in there. So you don't have to do the dance of a lot of folks where it's like, well, okay, and I'll go on my Twitter and I'll post about that on the Twitter. And then I'll go on to the YouTube and I'll post that. Oh, but I'm on the YouTube, so I got to post this other thing. And it's like, oh, and then, oh, I got to do an Instagram. No, it's you post it on one place and anybody can follow that who is interested in that particular thing and then do something useful with that. Now, I'm not sure if there's anything useful that you can do with, following someone from Mobilizon to a PeerTube instance. I don't know if that's necessarily going to do anything useful in that particular case, but maybe there is. Maybe there's something that can be useful in that. I don't know. I don't have the creativity to figure out if there's something useful. Hopefully someone does. So we're not limited to the ideas that folks have of how these specific services work. We can allow folks to be creative about how they should work and how they should appear. So if you have the creativity and the foresight to do this stuff, you can have all sorts of folks communicating in very interesting and unique ways. And that's where the beauty of the Fediverse comes in. And that's where the beauty of ActivityPub is a very simplistic protocol, but it allows for a lot of ideas and a lot of things to be built off of that particular protocol. So it's not limited to like XMPP, where you're sending chat-like messages across, and then somebody decides, oh, well, we want to do an encrypted type chat thing. So now we have this, RFC for OMemo or some other crap like that. Or, oh, we want to do video now, or we want to do SIP type calls on there. So it's like you're just baking all these things on top of it. ActivityPub is a lot different than that. ActivityPub's got a lot more flexibility to that. Whether you could do a SIP call on ActivityPub, I don't know. Again, don't have the creativity to think that that's possible, but maybe it is. So I talked a little bit about client to server, and I kind of said, well, yeah, maybe. I haven't yet to see a client to server thing actually work. All of the Mastodon clients that are out actually are using the Mastodon API, which is it's based off of the Twitter API. And I think all the rest of the clients aren't necessarily using the client to server protocol yet. So egg on our faces, yes, it hasn't been done quite yet. It has not been implemented fully on any platform as of 2021. 2 years have passed since then. Maybe something is different. I don't know, but I couldn't find anyone that had actually done something like that. There are certain applications that are trying to change this, but like I said, most of them are using some variant of the Mastodon API to do this. So there's a lot of room for improvement here. That said, again, developer creativity. This is an opportunity for folks to figure out how to make all of this stuff work. And I think it would be absolutely fabulous if we could figure out how to do this. So we talk a lot about decentralization. Now, decentralization means that there's no server to this. Now, let me restate that. There's nothing that says there is no centralized point for any of this stuff. So in the case of a thing like Mastodon, there is no centralized server. Yes, there is a mastodon.social. Yes, there are large servers out there, but they are not the center of the universe. They just happen to be big gas giants out there, sort of like Jupiter. It's not the center of the universe. It's not the center of the solar system or anything like that. And that's the case for all of these things. There's nothing that is centralized for this stuff. Your experience on one particular server will be vastly different than your experience on another server. So if I'm on a server like dice.camp, it's going to be vastly different than my experience on octodon.social, partly because of the things that they allow and disallow on there, partly because of the localized folks that are on there. So yes, there is no centralization. It's not like a Twitter where you're basically trying to get the attention of everyone on there. There are multiple servers that are communicating with each other. So each server has its own community, like I mentioned, with things that will excite each other and things that will tick each other off. So go into ActivityPub and Mastodon in particular with that in mind, that there are certain communities out there that will be welcoming of your shenanigans. And then there are ones that will be very upset with your shenanigans and things that will upset folks. Like I'm on I shouldn't say I'm on. There is a server out there called brands.town. It makes fun of brands and the whole, we want to monetize the Fediverse. So it has a whole bunch of fake brand accounts. Mastodon.social said, we no longer want to federate with this particular thing because it's a whole bunch of junk. It's basically a whole bunch of people goofing around out there. And apparently Mastodon.social said, we don't want that in our community. Silenced it, or they defederated from it. I don't remember exactly which, but basically they're like, we don't want to play with you anymore. That's fine. That is their choice. There are also servers out there that like, we don't want to talk with the main instance because the main instance has moderation issues. I'm sorry, the main instance. Mastodon.social has moderation issues. They do things that we don't like, all this other kind of stuff. So they defederate with them, they silence them, all this other kind of stuff. That is their choice. And that is part of your building of your own community. What is it that will excite you? And what is it that will tick you off? So in Mastodon parlance, it's covered under silence and suspend. Silencing means that server's federated material, so all the stuff that they are publishing from that server, does not show up in the timeline and does not show up in any accounts unless you explicitly follow that particular person. So in Octodon.social's case, they have Fosstodon.social silenced, which means that Fosstodon.social up in any of the federated timelines. Now, I can follow people from Fosstodon.social. I have no problem with that. I can get a hold of folks if I need to on Fosstodon.social. No problem there. Suspend is the ban hammer. Suspend means that it will refuse any kind of content whatsoever from that server. It's basically like the spam house type thing, where it says your server is no longer permitted to communicate with my server. Good day, sir. So it will deny any users. It will unfollow any of those users, all that other kind of stuff. And this is a good thing. And I'm going to say it's a good thing because like I said, every community gets to pick and choose what it is that they want to participate with. You need that in any kind of community. You need the ability to say, hey, these are the folks that we're going to hang out with, and these are the folks that we're going to ignore for the time. You do it on Twitter, you do it on Facebook, you do it on all of these other platforms. It's just you have different tools for doing that. Mastodon does it at the server level. It also does it at the individual user level as well. This is also true of things like PeerTube as well. PeerTube can federate with various different servers. There are servers out there that you definitely do not want to federate with because they publish a whole bunch of not very great content. And I'm being very, very specious about this because I don't want to name specifics. Because anyone can spin up their own server, they can put whatever the heck it is that they want on these particular servers. And some of it is not great. And I'm using that in the generous term, not great. So you get to pick and choose which of these you'll federate with in that. That's unfortunately part of the decentralized nature of this. It's part of the anyone can spin up any instance of this stuff. It's, you could call it the hoary underbelly of all of this stuff if you choose to do so. But it is one of those things because anyone can participate. Sometimes anyone can participate. Enough said. So why is decentralization important? Well, first off, there's no single point of failure. Nobody can take down the Mastodon network. It would require resources that would be very difficult to maintain and deploy to take down the entire Mastodon network. And as well, you could not take down the entire PeerTube network. You could not take down all these other different systems. You can also have multiple communities, again, around common goals, ideas, and traditions. So you have multiple different islands communicating in their own way, which I think is absolutely fabulous. And it allows for different experience that can thrive together. And I think that's very important. So here's a ridiculously incomplete list of ActivityPub services. And apparently it's going to just whine about all these misspellings here. Or at least it thinks that there's misspellings. So for microblogging, 3 examples of that, you have Mastodon in particular. You have Misskey, which is from what I understand, it's a lot less resources than Mastodon. Mastodon requires a large amount of resources to run. You need to have Postgres. You need to have there's a Sidekiq queue, which gets very overloaded very quickly. You need to have a lot of resources for that. MIStkey is a attempt to make that a lot less painful for folks. GoToSocial is another one as well that tries to make it a lot less painful. So you don't have to deploy quite as many resources to get that up and running. Image and video sharing, there's PixelFed, which is you can call it an Instagram alike. I've never used Instagram, so I don't know. I consider it more of like a Flickr-ish type Instagram pictures, and you can comment on them and be social about all of that stuff. PeerTube's is very similar to YouTube in a lot of regards. It's peer-to-peer, which means that you're sharing bandwidth with everyone. Upside of that is you're sharing bandwidth with everyone. So you don't, if they manage to get X number of bytes and someone else gets X number of bytes, it's not coming from your server. Bad news is that if you're publishing the first thing, everyone's pulling from your bandwidth. So it can be kind of bandwidth intensive, from what I understand. But I think it's an absolutely fabulous thing. We used to publish all of our stuff on PeerTube, and unfortunately our instance went rogue. It was peertube.social. Something weird happened and all of our content got deleted from there. So at some point, I would love to spin up a Mug PeerTube instance, but that is in the specuous future. Events, Mobilizon is one that federates. This is from our good friends over at Framasoft. I've played around with it a little bit. It looks very cool. But I think it's still a little in early stages. I think there needs to be a little bit more as far as moderation in that, because there's some interesting things out there. But I think it's really interesting. I wish them well and many successes on it, because I think it's going to be important coming soon. Book reviews. There's Bookworm, so you can. This is a very capable site, honestly, and it's actually my favorite reading experience thus far. Right next to the StoryGraph and Goodreads somewhere down in the far distant, bringing up the rear. It is a site for sharing books. It's a site for saying, "Hey, I'm reading such and such book. Here's my review of such and such book." Folks can pay attention to it. They can like it. You can post star reviews and all that other kind of stuff. Coming along, I'm on bookworm.social itself, but there's other Bookworm sites out there as well, so definitely check that out. Write Freely, I've not particularly used that, but it's for blogging and I know people have used it, and again, I'm on Mastodon, so I don't know what they're using for publishing their posts. It could be something as simple as they're publishing via this. I don't know. All I see is just posts in my timeline, and then there's their own thing. And this is kind of a smorgasbord. There's Friendica. Friendica has been around forever. I think they managed to finally get ActivityPub support, but they were doing their own distribution, decentralized stuff. I don't want to say anything bad about them because they've been around forever and they've been doing amazing things. So kudos. Awesome. And then there's also Hubzilla. It's in the same boat. I've not really used either of these things, but they both have ActivityPub support now. They kind of tacked those in. So they're doing cool things. And again, all of these can communicate with each other. You don't necessarily need to know who's on what. All you see is just the content coming through, which is an amazing thing. And I can do some demonstrations if you want. But I would also like to open it up for conversation. But before I do that, I'd like to say a few things. First up, all these projects are amazing. Please support them as much as you possibly can. This is the Mastodon logo. This is the PeerTube logo, or not PeerTube. This is PixelFed up top. Mobilizon. You got Bookworm. You've got PeerTube. All of these are absolutely fabulous. They're being developed by very enthusiastic volunteers who need your support. So please support them as much as you're willing or able to do so. So you may have questions. I have blank stares. I have links as well. So if you head on over to these various links, and I will hopefully post these slides up online, or if not, I'll at least give you a chance to copy all of this stuff down. Feta directory is really cool in particular because that's a directory of a lot of various accounts to follow. Join Mastodon is where you can get onto a Mastodon instance. Noel does a fabulous guide to Mastodon. It used to be the very short guide to Mastodon. And it's the not so short guide to Mastodon. PixelFed, again, is the image sharing site. You have Bookworm, which is for book reviews. Mobilizon is for events. Join PeerTube is the PeerTube landing page for a lot of that stuff. And then join Fediverse.wiki has got a lot of information about Fediverse type stuff. Before I do that, though, and I say this with all sincerity, many of the instances that are out there, if you decide to jump onto an instance, especially on Join Mastodon or on Join PeerTube or any of this stuff, a lot of these instances are run by volunteers. So please pay or tip your instance if you can or are able to do so. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing this for the sheer love of it. And unfortunately, love only goes so far, especially with hosting bills. So if you can, please give them whatever resources you can. And if you are so inclined, you can run your own server and customize it to your own needs and desires. So if you have the willingness to do so, the ability to do so, and the free time to do so, because some of these things can be kind of hoary messes, please do so. There's a lot of established communities on different platforms, Mastodon in particular, that have been happily communicating with each other for almost a decade. And I say this with all sincerity. There's a lot of folks that have been doing this stuff for a very long time. Folks that came from GNU Social, myself coming from Identica, we've been using this stuff for a long time. There's the occasional thing of Mastodon is crumbling, Mastodon is declining, Mastodon is this, Mastodon is all this other kind of stuff. Pardon my French, but it's all horse shit. This stuff works despite whatever reporter du jour decides to publish. They're looking for clicks, folks. This stuff works. It has worked for quite some time. I also want to say the Fediverse was built by LGBTQ plus Black, Indigenous people of color and other marginalized groups. They have always been there. Please respect that. There's all these various communities of folks out there. They've been here for a long time. They know their shit. So please respect them for that. Also, John Mastodon loves pineapple. That's kind of an inside joke. There was apparently some gentleman out there that could not figure out that Join Mastodon was not John Mastodon and thought that John Mastodon was the originator of Mastodon. Hilarity ensued. And so now there's the legend of John Mastodon, and he's got his own ballads and all this other kind of stuff. He's an American folk hero, or actually a Fediverse folk hero, better than Chuck Norris by a lot. And the pineapple thing is I can't explain it, because if I do explain it, they will kill me. And also William Shatner is still looking for Lance Ulanoff, but George Takei figured it out. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions and such. You can also follow me on the Fediverse. I have many of my accounts up on there. If you head on down to the social tab, you'll find all that other wonderful stuff. So, and these are all the image credits. David Rovois is amazing. Please send him all the money because he does amazing work. And also the Real Life Comic, November 8th, 2022 by Dean for Real Life Comics. And with that, I'd like to open the discussion, please. So let's do that. Are there any questions?
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Question for you. Is there any advertising happening on Mastodon?
Funny you should mention that. So there have been attempts to try and do advertising of some form, and they get quickly shut down. And the reason being for that is, number one, ad metrics on Mastodon are hopeless, and especially in the Fediverse are hopeless, because you can't really figure out where your stuff has gone. You can't figure out clicks and all that other kind of stuff. You could probably figure out a way to try and do that, but most people will shut you down. There is a very heavy anti-capitalist streak on the Fediverse.
Sure.
I'm not saying that it's not going to be possible. I'm saying that right now, people will look askance at them if they do so, and will probably basically defederate from them overall. I know there's some VC folks out there that are trying to figure out how to make money off of the Fediverse. I wish them well, but they're going to have a really bad time, unfortunately.
So, Craig, I'm confused a little bit about the scalability here. If
Sure.
you had 10 million followers,
Yes.
you would post to one spot, and 10 million different people would then ping that spot looking for your updates.
Well, so let's say you have let's make it a little more realistic here. Let's say that you've got 6,000 followers like myself. And let's say they're on a whole bunch of different servers. Those servers would ping and then distribute to all the people that are on there that follow my particular account. Now, scalability is kind of a problem on Mastodon and on the Fediverse in general, because you are literally sending one message out to every single server that's out there. The problem comes in, and this is where a lot of people found out what a sidekick queue is all about, because people would start following a whole bunch of folks, a whole bunch of messages would go flying through. And my limited understanding of Ruby is that sidekick is not necessarily it's a very blunt instrument as far as queuing. So it can get very overloaded very quickly. And so folks started trying to figure out how to optimize a sidekick queue so that it was performant and not spending a whole time trying to shove out all these messages to various folks. You are correct. It can be a problem for the decentralized web. At some point, maybe there will be things like Blaze or something like that, where you get a separate service that decides what needs to go where and that. But for now, yes, there will be a scalability problem, and there already is kind of a scalability problem.
And how vulnerable would this be to a denial of service kind of overloading kind of attack?
Well, let me flip it around. There are websites that are vulnerable to a Mastodon denial of service attack, because you can post a link to something and every Mastodon server will go out there and try and grab a copy of that so that it can display like a little thumbnail or something like that on that particular site. If you're not ready for it, it will knock your site offline. And I managed to figure this one out the hard way, because I have this game store that I absolutely adore that I've posted links to. And the moment that I post a link to it, I'll usually get something coming back that says, I can't get access to this because it's down. It's not down. The problem is that it's no longer on the net because it's busily dealing with a whole bunch of disparate folks that are trying to get access to it. But back to your original question of whether you could do a denial of service, you would have to do a denial of service on a whole bunch of various systems out there. Perhaps there's a killer packet or something like that you could create, a killer message that would be passed around that would take all of these folks offline. But you're also, again, just dealing with a whole bunch of disparate systems out there. So you'd have to figure out something that would work at the protocol level that would cause heartache for each one of them. And I'm not sure if that would be possible. I'm not saying that it's not, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm just saying that I don't know how you would do that offhand. I don't have that kind of creativity to figure that out.
Good. Thank you.
I know this is a lot of stuff to talk about in that. So
I've got something.
Sure.
I'm not sure how to articulate it.
Well, go ahead. We'll figure it out.
So let's say that I wanted to abandon entirely Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and all these other tools that are out there right now, but I still wanted the functionality. I still want to share videos and pictures and Twitter-like things and blog posts and stuff. And so I want to do something. Now I'm trying to have my beginner's mind understanding all this stuff. Doesn't that mean I have to go to some sort of Mastodon server and make an account, and a PeerTube server and a PixelFed server? So I'm doing the exact same thing with multiple logins on all these different servers. Is that how it works?
Well, yes. And even better, if you have multiple servers, you have multiple accounts on multiple servers. So I myself have multiple accounts on different Mastodon servers because I want to be part of each of those various communities. Like I said, I have one on dice.camp, which is a role-playing game server. I have one on octodon.social, which is my generic all-purpose server. I have one on penguicon.social because I want to be part of the penguicon community. So you'll have different accounts on all these various things. What I would push back and say, you already have multiple accounts on all these other systems as well, because Twitter is not Facebook. Facebook is not Instagram. Instagram is not, well, Instagram is Facebook. But let's put that aside for the moment. All of these various things require their own credentials. So in some ways, you're already doing this kind of account credential juggling as well. There is work for trying to make it so that you have a particular identity on the Fediverse. That is not there quite yet. So you will have to have multiple accounts on all these things. Now, if you decided to run your own, then basically you could create your own instances and say, this is my own PeerTube instance. This is my own Mastodon instance. This is my own PixelFed instance, all the rest of these things. And then that would be your domain would then be this is my identity person. You still have to have different accounts on those particular things, but that would be your quote unquote identity, would be all of these things are run by myself. That would be one way to approach it. But yes, you will have to have multiple accounts on all of these things.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
That does, and that kind of leads into a couple other things I had on my mind. So
sure.
I need to understand the community silo concept that's happening here. So you're saying something like, if I say PeerTube, that is a place, like if I were to say YouTube, is that kind of? Yeah. And so there is another thing out there that could exist that is PeerTube-like, which uses all the same functionality, that is just a different community with the same features?
Well, so think of it this way. So think of it in terms of your Gmail account versus your Yahoo account. Your Gmail account is a specific type of mail server that receives certain types of mail. Your Yahoo account would be something completely different altogether. They both service email in that capacity. So when I speak of PeerTube, I speak of PeerTube as the application itself. Now, these things get a little confused because there's also, various things that call themselves PeerTube whatever. And that, but all they are just instances of the PeerTube application that are out there with their own rules, regulations, and all that other kind of stuff associated with them.
So when you're saying PeerTube, I could make multiple PeerTube accounts for multiple communities that use PeerTube?
You could, yes. So let's say let's put this into a different perspective. Let's say that I was doing a RPG live stream thing or something like that. So I could create a PeerTube instance and have an account on there that could be specifically for my RPG live streaming stuff. Now, let's say I wanted to do a tech channel. I could create a separate tech channel thing, or maybe I could find a PeerTube instance that has tech-related stuff, maybe something like diode.zone or something like that, and create an account there. As long as I play within diode.zone's parameters and community standards, they will be fine with hosting my content on there. But let's say, I don't necessarily trust diode.zone for whatever reason. Not that I'm saying that there's bad things about them. I'm just saying that I'm all about owning my own content. I could then create a separate domain, separate whatever, and then create a separate PeerTube instance for that particular thing. So that would be completely separate. And then other folks can then follow that particular content however I want. Those are both separate PeerTube instances. Those are two separate accounts on those things, two separate sets of followers, two separate sets of people that I follow on those accounts, and all that other kind of stuff. One thing to keep in mind with this, and this may blow a few brains out there, but I think it's necessary to say this. Under centralized social media, we've been conditioned to think of ourselves as one particular entity because it is convenient for those social networks to have us as one particular entity. So stuff like Google Plus, where they had the real names policy for the longest time, where it's you only have one account on there, and folks would have multiple accounts in there. But the idea was that you were one specific person on any one of these accounts. I think Facebook also tries to do this as well. They try and silo you into one entity, one person. To my mind, you contain multitudes. I know I contain multitudes. I am a different person at various points throughout the day. I have so many interests, so many things that I want to do that I don't necessarily want to be constrained to one particular thing. Now, I do have my Octodon.social account, which is basically my dump all for everything. That's basically my unfiltered filter. But when I want to talk specifically about role-playing games, I go onto my Dice.camp account. If I wanted to follow some other interests, maybe game development or something like that, maybe I want to reach a different audience than I do on my Octodon.social account, I can do that. So you don't necessarily have to constrain yourself to being one person on any one of these things. You can be multiple people, and that's perfectly permissible and encouraged. You've heard probably people talk about after dark accounts, where they want to be their own, let their freak flag fly, all this other kind of stuff. That is permitted. Apparently I can do the English as well. So yeah, I would push back on the idea of being one particular person on the Fediverse, much in the same way that I would push back on, being only your work persona. Let's put it, not to put too fine a point on it. There was one instance that tied themselves to LinkedIn, so you had to have a LinkedIn account in order to join, and it's like, how horribly limiting that is. Like, why would you do that? Why would you go online and say, I am going to be my LinkedIn persona? Like, no, don't do that. That's just nasty.
You'd say you can be fired in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is not something that is necessarily the brightest idea that anybody has ever had, but apparently that was something that people felt was valuable. So
yeah. Hey, Craig, can I interrupt for just 1 second?
Please.
And something I think, and I've done my own talk on the Fediverse, and everything you've said has been on target, but I think as you're answering Sai's question, I think you might be missing something. I think maybe you touched on it in your talk, but maybe it hasn't been clear here.
Elaborate, please.
You okay with that?
Yeah, go for it.
So, Sai,
put words in my mouth.
When I'm not putting words in your mouth, maybe just clarify a little bit.
I'm just messing with you.
So when Craig says, like, oh, you can join a community on Diode.tube and you could join a community on Linux Rocks Online that are both PeerTube instances, keep in mind, to follow people on them, these communities are not insular. I can follow somebody on Diode.zone, or I can follow somebody on Linux Rocks without creating accounts on those things. What I can do is I'll see everything they post as videos. Like, say I subscribe for my Mastodon account. I don't have to create accounts on all those little insular communities. All I have to do is follow somebody over there. I can see when they post things. If that's PeerTube, that'd be video. If it's Mastodon, it would be messages. And I can comment on them. I can like them. I can boost them up so other people that I follow see them as well without joining them. The only reason you'd be required to join the community is if you wanted to post a video of your own in that community. So it's not as daunting as, oh, Craig has a dice, what is it? Dice dot party, dice dot zone
camp.
Okay, dice.camp. I don't have to join dice.camp to see what Craig has to say over in dice.camp. The only reason I would need to join dice.camp is if I want to join that community and post things from there. You know, if I follow Craig and then I find other people on dice.camp and I follow them and some of them follow me, if I post a message, they'll see that as well. So I can have some foot in that community without creating another account. So as much as I like Craig's idea of, you know, you have different accounts for different purposes. You don't have to have one for every single site you want to follow. All you need to do is have one site for each type of interest you have. If your interests aren't strictly divided, you can just subscribe to things and get that feed all in one place if you want. The beauty of it is there are options. You can keep things strictly divided and join communities and post within them, or you can, you know, maintain one place where you reach out to a lot of different things and follow a lot of different things. Is that fair, Craig? I think in your answer didn't really lead into that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't elaborate that. You can follow within the server guidelines. You can follow pretty much anything out there from any different account and that. And I'm going to try and I was hoping to try and you know what? I think I can. So let me bring up my penguicon.social account, partially because it's terribly active and partially because the only people that I'm following on there is myself. Because unfortunately, I don't want to necessarily. So on my Octodon social account, it's a little more active, and I don't want to, unfortunately, accidentally broadcast people's business that I don't know offhand. Mm-hmm. So on here, I posted. This is my Craig Maloney at bookworm.social account. So here is a book review on here that I did. Now, if I go to bookworm.social, there we go. I'm logged in on here. Now, it hasn't caught up with the fact that I'm reading the Mastodon for Dummies book quite yet. But it will show here, hey, I did a review. Oh, no, it did. Apparently it did. It is showing. Oh, no, I'm on Octodon. Damn it. Looking at the wrong tab. Too many tabs. So here it's saying that I reviewed the Solo Game Master's Guide. And so here, here's all the information about, hey, I did a review of the quarter century of Unix. All of these are showing as various posts on Mastodon. But in bookworm.social, let me see if I can. Here we go. My books, not your books, my books. The stuff that I'm currently reading and such. Here's the books that I'm currently reading. If I wanted to say, make a post about this, let me do that real quick here. So let me do a comment here. Liking the first chapter. Fabulous. I had to put a title in here. First chapter. Liking it. All right. Let me first off go here. Notification. Yep. Accept. So let me accept that. All right. So now on penguicon.social, it should say that my. Okay. Maybe at some point we'll come back and say that it got my file request in there. But sure, let me post on here. Got my liking the first chapter of this book, and I am. It's a very good first chapter. There we go. Boom. So now in the feed on here, at some point there will be a post in here that says that I'm liking the first chapter, and it'll be along these lines. It's just for whatever reason these systems get a little slow, and especially Bookworm in particular, I think has some queuing difficulties. But at some point, I will get that on there.
Okay, so I want to repeat all of this in my own words to see.
Please do.
And again, I've got my beginner's hat on, so
Please, yeah, that's a great hat to have.
So I, the individual, have multiple faces, let's say, like in He-Man. Okay, so or Transformers.
There you go.
If you understand the characters I'm referring to. So I've got a work hat and I've got a personal hat, and maybe I've got different hobbies. And so each one might have a different account. So let's say there are websites out there, and each of them presents its own community slash user interface. It has a set of features that I would want. And so my work hat wants a very specific set of functionality. It requires that for doing certain things. Now, I need to be able to share pictures and I need to be able to share short text, but I don't care about certain other features. So I pick something based on that. Now, I pick that and I have the ability to throw tentacles out and follow other people on other services elsewhere. And I can do the same thing by putting on my some hobby hat or another hat and just going on to different services. And there is some sharing in a web that overlaps between these different services. So for example, my work hat, my work server, let's call it, that server likes picture servers, A, B, C, etc. But it doesn't like video sharing services because that's not work related. That server is not about that. It chooses to not participate in that. But I've got my hobby hat, which is all about, live streaming and cat videos and all this kind of stuff, fun stuff. And I go to that server, but my work server can't see any of that stuff. It just doesn't participate in that. It can't see anybody else in my new community, my cat video community.
Yes.
So I understand that so far. So what I become subject to is for each login I have, for each hat, for each hobby, that server has a set of relationships with whomever it's associated with. And I become subject to that set of community standards or the culture that exists there.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure I understand what's going on here. So basically what I would need to do is I, the human, would need to go out and get directories of websites, kind of peruse them to see what hobbies they would service best and then what culture they would have.
Yes.
That's what's daunting, right? It
is very daunting. Yeah.
Because so I guess the first question is there some at least culturally standard way that all of these different sorts of websites convey their cultural preferences, their purpose?
Yes.
Like their mission statement?
Yes. So if you go to a Mastodon instance, it will usually tell you who moderates it, who the administrator is. Most of the time, they will tell you what they are about. The good ones will tell you all the things that they're about. And they will then give you a sense of what it is that will excite them and what it is that will tick them off, generally speaking. So if you went to somewhere like weirder.earth or something like that, it will come up and say, here's the things that we're about. Or if you go to dice.camp, it will come up and say, this is maintained by Sage LaTorra. Here's all the things that are community standards. Sometimes it will list all of the servers that it communicates with. I'm usually say these are the servers that are silenced. These are the ones that are suspended, that we don't talk to, and that. So you can get a sense for what those particular servers are about from that. One other thing that we didn't touch on is, and this is specific to Mastodon. I'm not sure how much it's been adopted by other applications, is portability. So you can try out a server and say, hey, I'm really enjoying this. It's fabulous. However, I feel like I need to move on because this other server seems like it's matching more of what I want. Or let's say, you have a particular server, the administrator says, hey, in 3 months, we're going to be shutting down because this is too much of a burden for me. So in Mastodon, it has the idea of moving. So you can export all of your followers. You can export, I don't think you can export your posts quite yet. But basically you can move accounts between different servers and your followers will follow you to your new account move.
When you say server, that's the same as instance.
Instance server, yes. Unfortunately, yes. Our good friends at Discord have really screwed up the terminology for servers and whatnot. But think of it as an instance, a server, box, whatever you want to call it. That you can move between each of those instances without too much difficulty. And again, you can also try out various different instances and say, I want to be a part of such and such, or I want to see what these folks are all about. I'm on tabletop.social, and I haven't done a whole lot on that particular instance because most of the needs that I have are met on dice.camp. But I still have that out there. So if something happened to dice.camp, it's like, okay, well, I can, transition all my folks over there if necessary. Or I could say, oh, I really want to hang out with these folks because these folks are cool. You can play around with that. And that's part of the beauty of this is that you get to be a kid. You get to explore and go through all these various places and say, hey, I'm the new kid here. I want to see what's going on here. You guys look kind of interesting. Sorts of things. Yes, Jim.
On the screenshot you were showing, you are at Craig Maloney at bookworm.something, right? So
Social.
you have a bookworm.social. Okay, so that's a unique name on bookworm.social?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Could there be another Craig Maloney on a different server that's not you?
Yes, there very much could be.
So
now,
you if you wanted to also be on that server, you might be Craig Maloney 126 at
or 242 because that's just how I'm wired. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So is there on Twitter? I would be JAMMCQ at Twitter,
yes.
or I would be at JAMMCQ, right? Throughout the world, that's me. So with Mastodon or with the Fediverse, you don't have a globally unique identifier for yourself.
You do have a globally unique identifier, but it's specific to that particular instance.
It's latched on a server.
It cannot be JAMMCQ or JAMCQ at wherever across the entire thing. It doesn't work.
Right. Okay. So you are at Craig Maloney at bookworm.social.
That would be the same. That would be the same.
It's exactly like email in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, I could be president of bad, not,
Right. You don't have to have accounts on other systems to follow people on those other systems.
Depending on the rules of that system, yes, you
may not need to. Okay. Yeah. Can you reply to their,
yes,
retweet
yes.
or
without an account? Okay. You're all part of the same pond. If you all decide, if your servers and instances decide to play nice with each other, you are basically all part of the same pond.
Okay. And they're going to see you as at Craig Maloney at bookworm.social?
They will see me at Craig Maloney at bookworm.social. If I'm posting from my Mastodon account, it's Craig Maloney at octodon.social.
Because you don't have a penguicon.social account.
Well, I do as well. I mean, I have a Craig Maloney at penguicon.social account because I'm a member of Penguicon and they granted me a social an account there.
Okay.
So it's something like the whole domain name problem.
Yes.
So you might, if you're Nestle Incorporated, you get Nestle.com. You bought that. You get Nestle.net, .org,
.co.
And it's up to the registrar to say, oh, look, it's Nestle.social, but it's coming from some guy in Michigan, so it's probably not them.
So this means
the real Nestle.
Yeah.
So say if I were popular enough and I justified doing so if I noticed some friend of a friend said, hey, there's this new silo that's coming up. I recommend it because it's the moderator from this other website starting their own thing. It's fresh, it's big, it's new, it's got this new feature. I would have to go in and make a new username there at every place I hear of.
You could, or you could just say, hey, everyone, I adore you all. I am only here at such and such dot whatever,
Right.
dot social or whatever.
Right, but some people are worried about preserving their brand and protecting their brand, and
This is not the place to try and do that. I mean, this would be like trying to,
whack-a-mole. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like every time that I get someone that says, "Hey, we created this new TLD. Do you want to have decafbad.tld?"
Like that happens
no,
now. Yeah.
I don't care. You know,
pay us and you can have it. Yeah.
yeah.
Can I merge
didn't
accounts? If I can move accounts, can I merge them if I own them both?
It does not support that quite yet. I don't know how that would work. You could move one account to a main account or something like that. I don't know if you could say move that other account to this other one. You might be able to. I leave that as an exercise to the reader and wish you all the best and all the luck that it works very well. I think it will work, but I don't know.
So if I'm attending this meeting, I'm learning about Mastodon and the Fediverse and
Yes.
Social and all that stuff. I want to create an account. Where do I go?
If you want to create an account on these things, and this is where things get a little tricky, and this is where I said it's going to take a little bit of figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
There's joinmastodon.org for doing
Okay.
Mastodon type accounts. There's also the other thing of, hey, buddy of mine in the real world, I hear you're on this particular server. Can you send me an invite? That sometimes works. So that
Hey,
you
buddy
at
of
least
mine.
have, yes.
I hear you're on a particular server. Would you send me an invite?
Why, yes. Yes, I could.
I want to. I'm talking like right now. I want to get on. I want to see what it takes to become part of this.
All right.
thing.
Well, I'm not going to share my screen, unfortunately.
It's fine.
Let me do the thing here. So if I go over to, I think I can share this particular one. So what is your email address, buddy of mine?
Let's do jam@mcquill.com.
Jam at
JAM
McQuill.com.
at MCQUIL.com.
All righty. So if I send a link and I send you
And this is coming from Mastodon?
This is coming from my octodon.social account. So if I go over here to Jim McQuillan, panelist,
Octagon.social email account.
it's my, and I paste this link over to you.
Oh, okay. So you're going to
And
send
then
me, I gotta find my chat. So you're
Yes.
going to send me, is this a private message or a...
This is a direct message that I am sending to you via
Okay.
thingy. Because what I do is I create an account and a link on there,
Uh-huh.
and that link can then be
I see it.
used.
Okay. So now I click that link.
Yep. And now
Should I share my screen and walk people through what I'm doing, or
if you wish, you can do
what
that.
things? Yeah. Well, let's make this an experience. Eh?
So was that like a Discord invite link?
Very much so.
Think.
Hey, Craig, just a little thing when you're done with this,
Yes.
have you figured out Federation on Mobilizon?
I have not. So the only thing
I have, and I'm happy to share it with you. That's why I asked. I figured
please.
it out like 2 days before my other talk. I finally figured. I've been trying for a year to do it. The documentation is horrible. So we'll talk
Yes.
after Jim's done. I just wanted to not forget to bring it to you.
Yeah, I gotta. Okay, when I shared my screen, I lost my.
I see your pointer every now and again.
Yeah. Okay. When I shared my screen, my Zoom window kind of shrunk, and I had to get back to the chat. So I'm there. So I clicked on the link. So here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to accept at that point.
Okay, I will not be free until everyone's liberated. We will not suffer corporate advertising. Spider rule. This is not exhaustive. Okay, I'm going to accept this. I read the whole contract, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You did.
Let's get you set up on Octagon.social. Okay. So,
where the hell is your cursor?
I'm in the username field.
Oh, okay. We're seeing is the ground rules still.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It actually opened a new window. Okay, so let me stop sharing and start.
Why don't you do setup real quick?
You can also merge windows if that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I could just grab that tab over and do that. Okay, so it wants a username and it's suggesting jam@bookwell.com at octagon.social. Does that sound right?
No, that sounds like an email address. You could just do JMCQ or something like that.
That's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then it wants my email address. Okay. Password. Right there. I have read and agreed to the privacy policy. Sure, I have. Okay, now they
no, you haven't.
Now they sent an email to me. I gotta go find my email.
So Murph, could you show us how you got Mobilizon to play nice with everything? Because I am very interested in Mobilizon.
Yeah, I'll show you. I was in the background getting things lined up to do exactly that. Is Jim done for the moment?
I think he is done for the moment. Yeah, because he's got.
I'm waiting for an email.
Yeah,
and it may take a minute or two.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and funny note. So I did the talk at scale the other day, which went pretty darn well, I think.
Awesome.
And I practiced it like 2 nights before, and I ran across the same thing. I posted something and things just did not happen fast enough. So I chickened out on doing it as a live demo, and I sent all the messages and bookmarked them. I was able to pull them all up because I said, this timing is not working the way I expected it to. So I'm going to back up and everything pre-rolled.
Especially stuff like Bookworm and that. I love the service. It's absolutely fabulous, but it is not the greatest for a live demo by any stretch.
Yeah, Mobilizon too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share my screen.
Please do.
And what it comes down to is it's all about groups, and it's not obvious at all.
Okay. So this is
because I've been looking at this for a while. Yeah. What's that?
So this is
Mobilizon. So this is Mobilizon. And here is the key. So here's a local meeting that I set up here. Okay. And I've already sent out this message. I'm going to flip over to my other account so you can see the message I sent out, and you'll see how you do it. But the key is, so let me, not that. That is just more Zoom. Okay. So let me full screen this. So if I go over to my bookmarks, we'll see where I did this the other day. Here we go. See local 2600 New Jersey meeting. That's because I followed the group Free Software Enthusiasts at events.nixnet.services. So you need to create. So this is one of those things where you can follow an event without having an account there. But to create new events, you need to have an account. So on Mobilizon.
This is Mastodon.
So Richard, this is a Mobilizon is a events calendar service. Think of something like Meetup, where you can post a meeting on there. This is using ActivityPub technology, though.
So it's still Fediverse.
It's still Fediverse. Yeah. Yes. It's still ActivityPub.
Yeah. And this, similar to, other things, like I wasn't able to follow anything from this. It's not like I have a full-fledged, Mastodon account within Mobilizon, but it can send out messages. I tried to reply and it didn't work. Again, I figured this out like 2 days before I had to do a demo. So I sort of halted the experimentation once I got what I wanted out of it.
Right.
So what you need to do to make this all work is you create a group. The group can be followed from Mastodon. Without getting into the groups, nothing does anything. It doesn't do anything on the Fediverse. Once you create a group, that group is an ActivityPub user. Is that what the term is? I never dug into the actual back end of it. Yeah, actor. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So the group is an actor. So when the group or someone in the group, I suppose there could be more than one person in a group, posts a new event, that gets broadcast out to everybody that's following that group. And that was the thing. I've been looking for a year. I go on the site. It says it's there. Nothing shows up. I was poking around in either Mastodon or, in one of my 2 Mastodon accounts. And then I saw something with Mobilizon. And I'm like, somebody else got it to work. And I followed it and I figured out how to do it from there. Absolutely no help from their site, unfortunately.
If I can give the excuse for them, their development is entirely in French, and that is their audience.
No, they're adorable people, honestly.
Yes, that's true, and they do great stuff.
No, they're trying to figure out all this stuff as well, and they're all volunteers. They do fabulous work. They're PeerTube as well, and I don't know if you've ever tried to do anything with PeerTube. It's gotten a lot better, but at the onset, it was really rough because it was basically one person trying to, shovel all this stuff together, and it's gotten a lot smoother. They've done really fantastic work, and I would love to kick folks like Meetup to the curb at some point, but this is closer to it. This is what I was hoping that Get Together that community would do, but unfortunately, it never managed to get to that point.
To be clear, they actually do have an employee across all of their projects.
Yes. Yes, and of course, this is Murph. You're demonstrating the wonderfulness of live demos, which is
that's when things didn't work the way I expected. I said, "That's it. I'm rolling a pre-rolled thing." So I had all the bookmarks ready to show exactly, so I could show. Oh, look, here's a Nixnet. Here's a Mobilizon. Here is a PeerTube share. Oh, sorry, this one was the PeerTube share.
Yes.
And then I had a pixel-fed one in there as well. I had everything all lined up and ready to go because the demo gods, I could see the demo gods were going to be cruel to me. So I said, I better back up and have a plan here. So
the demo gods are all about wedgies. Yes.
Yeah, it took me so long to figure that out. I said, I have to since you mentioned it and it didn't sound like you knew much detail. I'm like, let me share this little bit of information.
Oh, please. Yeah, no,
it made it work.
This is potpourri stuff. And the thing is, unfortunately, I do follow folks online, and I don't want to necessarily, air their business online as well. So I appreciate this very much with all sincerity. This is awesome. And I'm glad you're welcome. Because that's what you can shore up all my goof ups.
Oh, no goof ups. It's just, like I say, there's just that one thing I thought needed a little clarification. And the fact that I figured this out, if this was a week ago, I would not have been able to show you this because I hadn't figured it out yet. This is very recent that I got anything out of that. And I knew it was supposed to have it.
Yeah, this is synchronicity, because this talk was supposed to happen last month and it didn't. So there we go.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known then. I had no idea. I was still searching for it and not finding it.
That's awesome. Are there any?
So I got my email and I accepted I verified my email and all that kind of stuff. So I am on octodon.social.
Yes, you are.
What is the relationship between octodon.social and Mastodon?
So Octodon is run by Alice Voidstar. That's all I know her by. Okay. So it's a separate entity altogether. It has no relationship whatsoever with them.
But it seemed like the email I got said something about. Yeah, the email I have says Mastodon : confirmation instructions for Octodon Social.
Yes, Mastodon is the software.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your handle on there? I'll follow so you'll see something pop up there.
At JAMMCQ.
MMCQ?
JAMMCQ. Yeah, there's 2 M's. I just spell it out myself to answer that. Okay. The only person I'm following so far is Craig. Can I share my screen? Do you mind?
Go for it. Yeah.
I should update in a second. I'm following you now.
Okay. I'm going to, I believe that's it. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen.
So you have all my postings in that, and I have a reply to you that says hello there.
Hey, it does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go over to notifications, I think you'll see both of us having started following you.
I gotta move my
down and to your right.
Yeah, just a sec. I gotta drag my browser around so I can see it all. Down and to the right. This thing?
Nope, down and to the right from there, just a little bit. Notifications.
The thing that says notifications.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay.
And there you got Murph as
right.
well. And you can follow him as well.
now
So if you go right, you have a little
right.
button.
The plus thing?
Yeah, there you go. Click on that. And
So
suddenly
now
you're
I'm
following.
following him. Okay. So I can say something like, happy Pi Day, everyone. Everyone.
Yep.
And I guess what do I got to hit? Oot. Publish.
Oot. Yes.
Good.
Nice. And I just saw your message.
I did too.
Oh, great. Awesome. So I posted my first message. Okay. So here I am on Octodon.social. How do I find what's here?
So
how do I find who else I can?
Well, I can tell you several other folks that you can follow. You can head over to my followers.
Yeah, but we could do that all day long, right? I mean,
oh yeah, totally.
I mean, certainly there's a search. There's what is local? Who else is here?
Yes, there are other folks on there. But
okay, so I could just kind of browse through those and follow somebody if I want to, right?
If you also head on over to fedi.directory,
not
to be confused,
a URL.
Yes, it's a URL.
Okay, so
I'm going to post it into chat. So give me a second here.
Okay.
As I post it into chat. This is a human curated, interesting accounts thing. So if you're interested in, say, computing or technology, you know what? Let me share my screen here.
So I stop sharing mine?
Yes, please.
Stop share. And I see your thing. So I'm going to click on that link you've just posted. That'll open up my browser again with that.
I think I just confused the Zoom.
Segue opportunity into discussing algorithmic searches and stuff like that.
If you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Not really. But human creation is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's computer and technology, science and humanities, games, lifestyles. Cool.
So yeah, this is an account on Mastodon.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The instances. But yeah, it's basically, I don't know if you all remember like the Mozilla directory or what Yahoo used to do before they decided to try and do everything poorly. Human curated stuff. So let's say you wanted to find all sorts of things like, hey, Linux gaming. Well, hey, there's this person who's a prolific live streamer. Here's all the various places that you can get access to them. So this looks like a PeerTube link. Let's go there. Hey, there we go. Here's all the videos that this person has been doing. And here's all the videos and channels and all that other wonderful stuff. So, hey, I could probably follow them if I wanted to do so. Let's say I wanted to learn more about Lutris or something like that. You could do that. You could follow them at this particular link. Hey, Gaming on Linux. Been hanging around there for a while. Let's see what's going on here. Whoa, hey, it's so I can go here and let's say I wanted to follow them. It'll say, if you're on mastodon.social, you can sign in right here, or you can copy this link. So it's a mastodon.social / at Gaming on Linux. Copy that over into my Octodon profile, and then boom, I can do that.
That's how you follow somebody on a different server.
Yes, that's one way of doing
different instance. Okay. Wow.
So that I pay that guy to get listed.
No, actually, you just send them a link and say, hey, you know, I'm an interesting person, and then they figure out whether that's true or not. Tabletop RPGs. Hey, here's some folks that talk about all the stuff that's RPG related stuff.
So I'm going to do what you just did. Linux Weekly News. I'm going to follow that.
Yeah. Also, some of our friends are on Hachyderm. Hey, and I'll send you some links to them. as well.
Okay.
Or if you
So
go to my,
I just copied the link for LWN.
yeah.
So now I go back to my thing. And where do I add somebody?
If you go to the search area,
Yeah, okay. And I
That's where
paste
you
in
do
that
it.
thing that I just had. Okay.
yep.
And I press enter.
Oh, this is really good
Okay.
radio, isn't it? Sorry.
Now I do that. Okay. So now I guess I'm following. Now
It's
I
like
go
watching
home.
live coding.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who's I'm not sharing right now, am I?
No, none of us are sharing right now.
Okay. So I'm gonna share again just because why sit there and be bored, right?
I'm going to paste you a couple links to folks that I know you know.
Uh-huh. Yes, that's the
And
one
see if
that-
they follow you, because they don't follow me. Those jerks.
Yeah. Jerks.
Oh, so they do know you.
share that.
I'm calling one out, one particular, George. Anyways,
George. Yeah. I
You're
can't
sharing your
am
whole
I-
screen, not just your browser.
yeah, you're sharing the whole thing,
Yeah,
so I don't know
okay.
if you
I
want to
didn't
do
want
that
to
or
do
not.
that. Yeah, I didn't want to do that. Not that there's anything I care about, but okay. I have way too many things open, so let me clean up some of these windows.
Are there any other questions out there while we do a quick impromptu demonstration of things?
I do have one left over.
Please do.
So let's say I'm just some guy, I'm not a very active user of a particular server.
Yep.
And don't have my ear to the railroad track. I'm not plugged in at all.
Mm-hmm.
How would I know if there are changes to that server and its relationships to other servers? So if they decide there is drama out there and they disconnect from a server completely, how do I know if I've lost some followers or this kind of stuff?
One way is announcements. So on most of these servers, there's a little bullhorn looking thing that will tell you announcements. In fact, you can see that on Jim's screen where it says 2. Toward the very top, there's a bullhorn looking thing. Yep. If you click on that, that's server announcements.
Oh,
Is that part of the protocol or?
That's part of the software. That's part of Mastodon itself.
So
Now,
for
whether a particular server is suspended or whatnot, if you head on over to Jim, if you head on over to About down the bottom where it says octodon.social, About, down, other down.
Yeah.
There we go. It'll show you all the stuff. You scroll down a little further, moderated servers. Show you a list of all the servers that have been moderated, and sometimes it'll show you a reason why they've been moderated and such. And of course, it's also got lovely language in there, but that's why I adore Alice. Anyways, so that's all the stuff that's been silenced, and then you have under suspended. Those are the ones that it no longer talks to and such. Anyways, let's get off of this page, if you would, because otherwise you're going to get into some really dark stuff.
Okay.
So I would have to be on top of that list to know whether or not something was put on.
That's one way too. There's also a tag called Fetablock. It's a hashtag that generally has what's the scuttlebutt going on as far as servers that are talking with each other and not talking with each other. That's generally an administrative tag. So say follow some administrators on there, and if you really want to go down into the wonderful world of discourse and meta and all this other wonderful stuff, you will get your fill times 10. You think Twitter is bad? Have a whole bunch of people that are talking amongst each other about various stuff. It can get pretty dark very quickly. I don't tend to follow it as much, but by all means, follow your bliss on that.
So there's a coding opportunity for me to have a feature that scrapes that about page.
No. And this is another wonderful thing. Everyone manages to step in. Do not scrape the Fediverse. And here's why. There's a lot of people living their best lives on here that do not necessarily want to become part of a database without their knowledge. If you do something like this, by all means, make it opt-in. Do not make it opt-out. People decide that the thing that the Mastodon Fediverse needs is a search engine, because they want to be able to search all the content on Mastodon. There are a lot of people who are running quiet. To use a submarine terminology, they're going dark. Very much so. They don't necessarily want to be surfaced. Again, this gets back into marginalized groups, people of color, Black folk, LGBTQ stuff. They don't want to be out and about as much as folks think that they want to be out and about. So there are folks that have their reasons for running dark, going silent, whatever you want to call it. Putting a search engine onto the Fediverse is a very big no-no. It will literally get you the ire of everyone on there, possibly even knocked offline. Who can say? We've got some very interesting folks on there that have very interesting. I would recommend, if you're going to do something like that, talk with people about it first, so that you can figure out what the tone of the rest of the Fediverse is, because so many people have done this, and there's a joke, how many days since the last person decided to do a search engine on the Fediverse or decided to scrape the Fediverse, and it's the eternal zero on there. Just get the lay of the land first before you decide that there's a coding opportunity for this, because so many people throw technology at this stuff, and invariably it goes horribly, horribly wrong, and they get giant teeth marks in their bums as a result.
So I don't fault you for going down that route, but
yeah.
I wasn't talking about scraping any content.
Okay, sorry.
What I, as a user, am interested in knowing is if my server goes bad for me and when I should pick up my toys and go to some other server. So I want to know what the changes are to my particular server. You were already talking about there being both a hashtag and administrators and the announcements feature that does the announcements feature exist on every single server?
No, it does not.
So I need to find whatever unique concept of announcements might exist on any particular.
What I would recommend in that case, if you are concerned about how your server is being maintained, I would recommend running your own server, and I would recommend getting the lay of the land from other administrators as well, on how all that stuff works. The reason I say that is there's a lot of folks who are not necessarily happy with some other people's decisions. I know one friend in particular was not happy that the server that we're on did not support or decided to defederate from infosec.exchange, which is a whole bunch of info security folks. Mm-hmm. So if you want to curate your own experience, I would say run your own server and find out from others what all that entails. Because it's not just the technology, it's also the moderation that's involved with that. And there is a lot of moderation out there. And that's, again, when I say it's not that complicated, but it's complicated. There's a lot of people out there. And like I said, people will spin up their own servers on a dime and do very interesting and not necessarily great things. You need to be on top of all that stuff.
So
go ahead.
So let's say I go exploring.
Yes.
And I find out that every single server I've come across has some combination of agreeable and disagreeable choices for
Yes.
their associations or their moderation, which is inevitable, I think. If I'm picky enough, I will dislike something. And so I end up making multiple accounts on every single one of them.
Yeah.
Is essentially what I'm forced to do. And then kind of manually figure out who to follow and where my little windy paths go to what servers and how I follow people. Is there a way for me to, how would I put this? I want to bypass the entire concept of this banned servers concept.
Okay.
Is the way to do that running my own stuff?
Yes.
And then having it associate with all of these other servers, and I maintain as a server administrator those relationships.
So be very careful with this. And I
Because it's
say
illegal.
this. Well, no, I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm saying that people also can see what you are federating with.
Okay.
So there's guilt by association. And people will defederate from you because you are associating with ne'er-do-wells and vagabonds and all that other wonderful stuff. So think of it as you are showing up in a gigantic ballroom with everyone dancing amongst themselves. If you are associating with folks that folks do not feel that they want to associate with, they will no longer associate with you. They will defederate from you in a heartbeat.
So that can't work then, because that's built into the protocol. Is that the right word?
It's built into the community standards, is what it is. So it's the equivalent of if you hang out with such and such, I am no longer going to hang out with you. Sorts of things, and that's human nature.
I mean the lack of anonymity in server association, it's built in at the technological level. So if I were to set up a server, I have to admit all these associations to everyone.
You admit it because you are leaky.
Okay.
Because everyone knows who you are federating with.
Yeah, that's built in.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially what I would have to do is I would have to make accounts on many, many servers and kind of discover where the flaws, in my opinion, are of any particular server, and then make accounts on the servers that they don't like, just to make sure that I have the overlap that is suitable to my interests.
If that is how you wish to live your life, that is one approach. I'm not going to say that's a bad approach or anything like that. I'm just saying that's way too much work for my tiny little mind.
Well, no, I mean it's like having, like, I might have a hobby interest that is just slightly greater than the interests of a particular hobby server. And so that hobby server, it's all about only tabletop role-playing games. But I do tabletop and board games, and they refuse to talk to the board game people because
if you find people that are that precious about it, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
right. So there are slices of hobbies that are opposed to one another's, like LARPing versus in actual armor beating on people. Different, right? So they don't talk. So I'd have to kind of navigate that myself. Okay. And I get it.
So I've got a question for you. You said when you first started talking about on this topic, you said I would have to go and make multiple accounts on multiple servers. Did you mean go to each server and create multiple accounts on that server, or are you talking about one account on multiple servers?
Actually, well, I guess now that you mention it, I do mean both. Because you can imagine having your work hat and your personal hat. You go.
Okay. But if you weren't thinking of having two identities for yourself, you would go to these different servers and create a single unique account on that server, so you could access that content, and then you go to another server and create yet another account on that server. Okay.
Yeah, and it really does depend on, I guess, what web of followers and followed I want to create.
Okay.
But for me,
Okay.
I'm mostly a
So-
content consumer. I'm just concerned about the server level of what I get
Right.
access to.
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen still, and I've clicked on local. And so I guess these are not people I've necessarily
No, that's
shared,
all. That's
followed,
all
right?
stuff that's on the local server. So that's people that
So
are
the
on.
local server being Octodon.social?
Yes, and
Okay.
some communities use local as their
Mhm.
kind of water cooler type discussion. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And this gets into the specifics of how Mastodon itself does the activity protocol, activity pub protocol, which I don't necessarily want to get into because it's
Okay.
not necessarily germane to the entire Fediverse. Every one of them does
Okay.
it.
So I scroll down. I see people I know, like Kathy.
Yep.
So if I
Yep,
click
yep.
on her, I can follow her. Will
Yep.
she know that I'm following her?
Yep, she'll get a notification.
Okay. Cool. So
And
I'm
might
following her
follow
now.
back.
Yeah, and might follow back or
Yeah.
might block you.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Anywho,
Could be.
so we are running out of time. Can you
Yeah.
unshare the screen there? We can talk a little bit
Sure.
about
Sure.
because we've got Sean Powers, who's also on the Fediverse.
I'm gonna go find him.
Yeah,
Is he any idea what's okay? Sean Powers. I want to follow him. I have no idea what server he would be on.
I would say
Where would I
first
start?
go to my follows on my
Go
account.
to your follows. Okay.
I'll send you the
So
link.
if you're just
No,
looking
that's a
for him,
good
it's
link. I
Sean
wanna-
with a W, Powers with
Hang
a
on,
zero.
hang on. Stop. I know I can ask you and you can tell me, but in 10 minutes, we aren't going to be talking, and I'm going to have half a dozen other people I want to go find.
So I
how
sent
would
you
I go
to my
about that?
following folks. These are folks that I am following. I think that
Okay.
will overlap a lot of your stuff. If you're trying to find other folks, it gets a little tricky because again, depending on what the server communicates with, the server, Mastodon in general, all that other kind of stuff, it gets funky.
Okay.
Lack of a better word. But those are all folks that I am following that we may have.
Okay. So I'm actually on your profile right now.
Yes.
And I see you've got posts, follows, and followers. So I can go to follows and I can get to the same thing that your link would have taken me to, right?
Yep.
So then I can just browse down through this link of 1,000
Yeah,
or so.
if there's
people.
anyone that's looking interesting in that
Right,
particular.
right. Oh, there's Rick Harding.
Yeah, I sent you that link.
I don't need your link now. I've actually got your page.
And there you go.
Okay, so that's cool. So I can spend hours.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, I follow 1,000 people on there.
Yeah, this will take me a minute or two.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really neat. I feel like I've learned something and accomplished something.
Excellent.
That's what we can.
That's
hope
all we're
for
here
out of these
for.
meetings,
That's what we're
right?
here for.
Yeah. Yeah.